Hey guys, this is me, Rez-G from Rez-G Gaming and Chillin'. So I'm a kind of like a newbie in game streaming. I just started game streamings about last month, so really new to it. But in terms of PC gaming, I've been starting since about 1999. Of course, 1999 was the starting year that I start having a PC on my own. But from time to time, I started to upgrade my own PC, building up my own PC, and I do encounter a lot of issues through the years, which gives me the knowledge in return. Part of that, since I have this page, Rez-G Gaming and Chilling, I do see people having issues with their PCs, which is to me personally, what I can see is that the main culprit is the power supply. And the symptoms that they commonly have is something like I switch on the PC but keep on restarting, or I switch on the PC just for a few minutes and it just like shuts down like some magician, you know. And the worst part is that I bought the PC. I bought the PC, but then after I upgrade a few items, it lasts about 1 or 2 days, and that's it. The PC just dead. You know. So from my point of view, based on my experience, that is mainly because of power supply. Power supply is actually one of the two main items that people kind of like ignore or don't really care about when buying or choosing a PC. So, in a PC world, to have a good PC, the two main items that you need to really choose wisely is power supply and processor. These are the two things. Some people say probably is also the motherboard itself. So to me, it's these two because one is the brain, the processor is the brain, the power supply is the source of the power. So if you have the source of the power, definitely you can have sufficient supply or energy to the system. If you have the brains, so it means that you can able to command all of the components to work as you want them to do so. Okay, so power supply is just one of the item. Okay, so I'll share based on my 20 years of experience in PC gaming. I can't I'm not the same level as those hardcore reviewers out there. So I'm just a newbie, but hopefully I'm explaining to you all a newbie type of understanding about how to choose the best power supply that suits your system. All right. So let's start it right away. Okay. So the first thing that you want to buy a power supply is, of course, how many watt that you want for your system, right? Normally, personal point of view is that for PC gaming, if you just want to do some mid mid end gaming, my proposal is to get a 600-watt power supply. If you want to go for hardcore gaming, get a 750-watt power supply or more. If you really want to do massive video editing, if you really want to do hardcore gaming, you want to, make your PC like a fun fair, all the lightings and the water cooling and shit, that kind of stuff. So that you need to consider probably like 1,000-watt power supply, but it depends. So let's not go further about that. Let's talk about the watt. Okay. So let's say if you want to buy a power supply, okay, with the calculations of the configurations of the components in your PCs, right? Let's say you want minimally a 600-watt power supply. Means that what you're expecting is that you have a power supply that gives you an actual power supply of 600 watts, right? So this is what you feel that you want to do. You feel that you want. But the main issue here is that not everyone actually verifies actually what is the true power that the power supply is giving to you. Okay, so let me show you an example. Okay, this is what you call the power supply or the power table. Okay, so as you can see here, okay, this table you can find in two areas normally. One is on the packaging itself, and one is on the power supply itself. Okay, so if you look at carefully, the table here, you only focus on the plus 12V volts. There's the table there. You look at the plus 12V column. Underneath it, you check out what is the maximum load or the power that they're going to supply. So if you see here, this power supply stated 600 watt, but the true power that this power supply is supplying is actually 504 watts under the plus 12 volts. So why I'm talking about only the plus 12 volts or the plus 12V table is because that is the main power channel that gonna spread to the rest, to the rest of the system. Okay, so for this particular table, what you can see here, a person may be buying a 600 watt power supply based on what has stated on the box itself or on the power supply itself, but actually the true power that they are receiving is only 504 watts. So for this case, it's okay, it's fine, because you buy a 600 watt, but the true power you get about 500 plus is okay. But what makes it more disaster is that, for example, you buy a 500 watt power supply, and since it's cheap, you didn't even care about checking the table or what is the true power. But when you check the true power from the table itself, instead of getting 500 watts, probably you get about 300 watts, which is way, way, way less than the watts that stated on the box or the power supply itself. So this what happens why the power supply costs so cheap, but yet giving you or showing you the high amount of watt, but in actual, the true power is way, way less. And this what happens when most of the time when a person buy a power supply, they thought the power supply is good enough to handle all of the components in their PCs. But the moment when they add more components, the moment when they go further, the power supply will get stressed, end up the system will just break down. And if the power supply is the only thing that is breaking down, is fine. But the worst part is that it's not only the power supply, but the rest of the components itself also is falling out apart. Because if you stress a power supply, it will not able to function accordingly. It will not able to supply efficiently to the rest of the components, especially the processor. When insufficient power being supplied to the processor, you'll end up the processor itself will be screwed up as well. So a good power supply can also make your processor life longer. Surprised? Don't be. That is its true nature. That's why the important thing to buy a PC is the first is you have to consider about getting a good and decent power supply. The rest of it is up to you, depend on your expectation, depends on your requirement. All right. So this is the first criteria or first item that you need to check in your personal checklist before you choose what or which type of power supply that you want, because there's a whole lot of varieties out there, seriously. Okay, second thing is we talk about types of power supply. First we talk about the normal power supply. As you can see here, silver thingy power supply, right? This is the common power supply that you'll be getting when you purchase a standard setup, normally for office use, you know. And this power supply costs really cheap, and the power, the wattage that they have is really low. Means that if you buy a PC from a shop, right? And they have all these packages. This for starter packaging, starter package. This is the so-called low end gaming package, mid end, high end. So normally the low end they will use this power supply. Means that it's good enough to supply power to the rest of the system, but it may not be worthwhile if you plan to add more or upgrade more into your system. Means that if you want to go further, if you want to use a more super duper graphics card, if you want to do overclocking, if you want to add liquid cooling, it'll destroy your system, especially the power supply. Okay, and as you can see here as well, this is so-called a non-modular power supply. A non-modular power supply means that the whole cable is being tied up in one bunch and is embedded from the power supply itself. Non-modular means that the cables are intact. You cannot detach the cable. So it'll stick as it is. So it's up to you how you want to route, how you want to do the cable management to make it tidy. Okay. The second type of power supply that we will see in the market is the semi-modular or semi-modular power supply. As you can see here, semi-modular means that it's not fully modular, of course. You can see the main branch is still intact, which is connected from the power supply itself. That main branch is undetachable, okay? And you have some slots for cables to plug in. Means that uh if you having like if you only need like maybe like 5 cables to use in your system. So you only need to plug all the 5 cables and that's it, you know. So to have a modular system in a power supply means that you have the option to detach those cables that you are not using. Okay. So with that, actually it gives you the flexibility in making your PC more tidier. The airflow in your PC better means that if less cables means less headache in terms of do the cable management, and also less restriction for the airflow from the outside of your PC to go into the inside the PC itself, and the hot air will emerge outwards. Okay, so this is called semi-modular, means that not all is actually modular but only semi. This is actually good enough for you to buy for even high-end gaming. Seriously. Okay, semi-modular power supplies are a lot out there in the market. The prices are not as expensive as before. uh So if I were you, I would get the semi-modular. Okay. The next, which is more expensive, is the fully modular power supply. So if you can see here, a fully modular power supply means that every cable that is meant for the power supply is able to detach or reattach. That's it. So the difference between semi-modular and fully modular, from my understanding, is that the amount of cable that you can control. I mean, if you talk about fully modular, of course, if let's say your amount of cable required is only 5 or 10, for example, then you can only put 10. But if let's say for the semi-modular power supply, if let's say the amount of cable that required is only 10, for example, but the main power supply or the main branch is still there, so it become 10 plus 1. So not really much of difference. But in terms of price versus performance, I would personally go to the semi-modular power supply. I would go for it. Seriously. Nowadays, it wouldn't cost that much. But nevertheless, if if there's a constraint in your budget, right, you can also get a non-modular power supply. But remember, don't get the non-modular power supply like the silver type. Get a good power supply, a non-modular good power supply, which gives you the required or the expected plus 12 volt wattage or the true power. Means that it's okay for you to buy a fully non-modular power supply with a good true power. Okay, good true power means the true power that's stated underneath the plus 12 volt, which I've spoken earlier on the table itself. It's okay. All right. So it depends on your pocket. If you want to make it nicer, if you have more budget, you can go for semi-modular. If you don't have that much, you get a non-modular, but get a good one which stated the right amount of true watt that you want. Okay. The next is what to look for when buying a power supply, which is quite important nowadays, is the PSU cables or PSU connectors. Okay, I don't want to talk about the rest, just focus on the PCIe pins. Okay, we have two types of PCIe pins normally. One, we have PCIe 6 pin. I mean, we have one pin, one PCIe, we have 6 pins. Another one, they have 6+2 configurations. 6+2 configuration means that you can either use 6 pins only without the 2, or if you have an 8-pin plug on the graphics card, then you will use the 2 pin together, attach it, it become 8 pins. Okay, that is 6+2 pin means. Okay, so my personal recommendation, if you want to buy a power supply, you check on the cable PSU connectors which they are offering. Minimally get a power supply that offers one set. That means two pieces. Two pieces of PCIe 6 plus 2. 6 plus 2 pins. Minimally, you need to get one set. Means two pieces. Should be enough. That should be enough. Okay. Reason why is because if you're into gaming, people know that not everyone have money in their pockets, right? Some they will keep some money, they save some money, and then they will buy a graphic card that they wanted. Some they'll buy a decent graphic card, but then upon time they will upgrade, right? So if you don't have these pins, for example, then you end up you need to buy an extension, or probably worst case you need to buy a new new PSU. So the difference between getting an extension with the original cable is that normally when the PCIe comes naturally with the PSU, the power that's supplying into the graphics card is more stable compared to those which you add on with the extension. Normally it's like that. So we try to avoid that complication. So it is best to make sure you check the power supply to have at least one set or two pieces of 6+2 PCIe pins. You got that? It's all sorted out. Okay? So these are the main things that I really look for when buying a power supply. Another thing which is not really that critical or crucial for you to select power supply, but it's just good to know as well. Okay, what is it? It's the rating table, power rating table. A good power supply, normally they will either have 80 plus symbol, 80 plus bronze, 80 plus silver, and 80 plus gold. So what does it mean by this 80 plus? 80 plus means like 80% of efficiency of the power supply to the system. The more efficient the efficiency is, the more stable your system would be. This is about it. Okay. So the difference is that it ranges from 80% to 87%. We talk about just about the full load, 100%. Okay. So if you buy a power supply which only have 80 plus, right? Under full load capacity of your PC, you get about 80% of efficiency of stable power being supplied to your system. But if you get a gold 80 plus certified power supply under full load, you'll be getting about 87% of stable power being supplied to the system. Okay, so it's not much of a difference, but as I said, for long term, it is good to get a decent power supply. From my point of view, you can get 80 plus bronze or silver. Okay, so most of the power supplies out there, which is good power supply, they are all rated minimally 80 plus bronze. Okay, so that's just about it. Okay, so these are the main things that I look for before buying a power supply. So for me, my personal point of view is that before buying a whole system, I would rather study, and get the best power supply first. Once I get the power supply, then we can talk about the rest, motherboards, processors, and everything. Because power supply is the core of your system. If you want to go more with your system, if you want to make your system more reliable, if you plan not to, if you plan to, what do you call it? If you plan to upgrade more in your system, well, this is the thing that is worth investing for. A good power supply will last longer. A cheap power supply will not just last longer, will spoil the rest of the components of your system, especially your processor, because the the power supply itself is actually because the power supply itself is actually the power supply itself is actually making your processor life longer. So the life of the power supply, the life of the processor depend on the power supply itself. The performance of the processor also depend on the power supply itself. So that's about it, about how to choose before buying a power supply. Hope my information would be sufficient enough for you to decide whether which power supply that you can buy later on. There's so many brands out there. There's so many varieties. So just do the study investigation. So if you like my information, do like, subscribe, and I'll share more information about PC for newbies. Okay? So thank you very much. See you guys next time. It's Rez-G. Peace out. Bye.